Welcome to another video of mine. Today we'll be talking about random colors. I know as a beginning programmer, sometimes some concepts might seem a little difficult. It's happened to me a lot of times. So I decided to show others the methods I use to apply random colors to blocks in my own game, but you can also use it for different purposes. You can use it to modulate the tint on sprites, on other shapes that you created. You could just directly change the color. Let's get into it. Okay, let's start off by switching to the 2D screen, and let's use a 2D scene, a 2D node. And my favorite thing, the colorect. Let's just add a colorect here. You could just type it COLOR or whatever, and you get a colorect. I'm going to move it down to somewhere in the center of the screen and widen it a bit. Nice. So we want to change the color of this colorect. You can change it by, on the right hand side you see the colorect. It has a color property at which we can just move the sliders around and change the color. Or there's another way you can affect the color. You can affect the color by using a modulate. You can also change up the sliders there as well. Only one thing, if you're going to use the modulate, make sure you don't have any other color in the color property itself here, or it's going to mix with the modulate. Because modulate is like adding a tint on top of the actual color. So it already has a blue. Let's put a yellow on it. We'll get a green, which is not what we want, because if you look at the modulate, you'd see that we want blue. Unless you want that effect, well then go right ahead. But I'm just going to deal with changing the color of the block in this segment. I just want to introduce a new node for now. I'm going to change this 2D node into something. You can right click it and click change type. I'm going to change it to a control node. Control is meant for UI. When you want to do a lot of coding for UI, using a control node it's much easier, because you can control the other UI elements within the screen. I'm going to click node 2D. Let's give it a descriptive name. Let's call it colorect screen. I don't know what else to call it. Screen. And let's save this. Control S to save, and you can organize your folders in here, but I'm just going to save as is. And just click colorect screen. Great. I'm going to add a script to this. Leave it as is, all defaults, everything that I have here already. It's going to have an empty script. Great. What we want to do is we want to change the color of the colorect. So let's do this inside ready, maybe. For now, we can always move it into another function. So let's type func. I'm a terrible typer. Underscore and ready. And when we start this game or preview, we want the colorect, and we're going to change its. Look at the colorect, hover over the color property, and you will see the property is common C, lowercase c, color. And when you're changing the color, you're going to use a high case C color. So let's do that. Colorect.color to access the property, and we're going to change it to, it's equal to, and we're going to type in capital C, color, open close brackets. What we can do here, we can hover over the last color that we typed and right click, and you can go to the bottom of the menu and click pick color, and you can change the color right in here, and it's going to give you a code value for it. So let's say we wanted this weird looking color here. Let's this sort of bluish purple color. Well, let's accept that, and you'll see it puts in a code as raw values 0.157, 0.192, 0.447. These are RGB values, and let's just save this and see how it works. So when we run this, remember the first time it's going to ask you for your main scene. Just select the current. It's going to set the color to what you just chose there. If you want to change the alpha is the fade of the color. You can just add it. It goes from 0 to 1 in raw. So it's a float. If we put 0.2, let's say, it's going to be lighter in color. Well, more transparent, that is. Let's try this out. So as you can see, it's a bit faded out. Maybe if we put something behind it, you'll actually see what I'm talking about. Let's go back to the 2D, and let's add a normal correct here. Control D copies it, and let's just move this around, and let's put it to the bottom of this one. So the correct 2 is at the bottom now of the correct 1, and just to show that it's a bit faded, as you can see, the alpha controls how much fading goes on here. Okay, I just did all of that to demonstrate that the color actually changes, so we can see that on our own. So let's just remove most of the things here. Let's remove the correct 2. So I'm going to press delete. I will leave the original correct, and in the code on the script at the top, click script at the top, and we're going to remove the correct. And don't forget the tab. Let's pass this a bit as a placeholder. Great. The reason I wanted to use the control as the main node is because I wanted to add a button inside of here. So let's just add a UI button, something that we can press to change the color when we want to. Just going to add and type button. You can see all these fall under control. It's a green circle. Once you see green, it means UI. UI being user interface. And there's a button here. You have different types of button. Check, color picker button. We don't want a color picker button. That's a whole different thing. You're actually going to pick the color in the screen. We just want a normal button or texture button. A normal text button will do well for me. So let's double click that. Let's just move it around. I'm going to click the move button here so I won't get any problems grabbing anything else, and just drag this down, drag it across, and the button here, let's just add some text. Let's type change color, and it fills out, text fills out the button. You have different things you can do here, but all I want is a basic button. So I can just click this back here, and I can change the size of this button a bit. It's just a button. And let's save this and play. Nothing's going to happen, but I'm just going to demonstrate that you have a button here, a clickable button. Now we want to wire this up using something called signals. Signals is really, really important in Godot. It's similar to events. Actually, it is an event, but it's called signals in Godot. Signals is a really big topic because it affects everything. But I'm just going to use one little signal. Every time you click the button, it's going to send a signal to the correct to change the color. So let's do that now. Okay. So let's go into the script. Let's click button on the left hand side. And if you look on the right hand side, at the top, you see some tabs. Right now we are in the inspector. Let's go across and click node. When you want to get a signal, you go across and click node. And at the bottom here, underneath node, you will actually see some events or signals, as we call it, that you can use in your code to effect some sort of change. Right now, what we want the base button. That's what our button is. It's a base button. If you hover over it, you'll see button, and it's a base type button. You can go down, you see there are no other buttons or anything here. The only button we have is at the top, base button, and we can click the pressed. We're going to use pressed. The signal is when the button is pressed, and let's double click that, and it's going to ask you in the center of the screen. You'll see it's going to ask you where you want to hook up this function, this on button press function. We only have one script right now, that's in the correct screen. It's already showing here, but if you have multiple scripts, it's going to ask you to choose one. So I'm leaving it as is in the correct screen, and I'm going to click connect, and there we go. As you can see in the script screen, a function on button pressed has been added automatically for us. What we need to do now is add code to control what happens every time the button is pressed. For now, let's just put a print, print, and let's put print button is pressed. This is just to test to see if the button is working. And let's save that. Let's run this. I'm going to move it aside a bit so we can look at the bottom here in the output monitor, and we can click everywhere else, nothing is happening. But if we click change color button that we made here and add a signal to, you'll see it says button pressed every time we click it. So now we know the button is working, and the signal that we added to it is working as well. We can close this off. Let's just add a little extra to this code. We can take off the print statement because we know it's working. But remember, we spoke about changing the color. Well, let's just change the color of the color rect. Let's drag the color rect in here. Oops. Yes. Drag the color rect. Dot color is equal to capital C color. And let's right click this and choose something. Let's make it all red. So let's go to the bottom and pick color. And remember, this is RGB, so R means red. If we put R all the way up and lower the G and the B, we will get absolute red, I guess, which is 255. If we click raw here, we will actually see the float values that we get inside of the color function. And there we go. We have color is equal to R is 1, G is 0, and B is 0. So what we're testing here now is if we click the button, the color rect is supposed to change to red. So let's save this. So it starts off white. Let's click change color, and it's red now. So this works. It works perfectly. Now we just have to figure out how to write code to select random colors. Let's just close this off. To truly select random colors, we can use the random range. Okay, well, let's start by defining a variable for random range. You'll see what I mean in a while. Let's just call it rand. It's a channel color because it's either RGB or even alpha if you want to play with the alpha. But let's just call it random value. Yeah, it's a random value. Good, that'll be easier. Is equal to what we use is a built-in function called randf range, because it's, I'm just type it in, randf underscore range. Randf means a random float. You also have random I. In this case, remember we're using values from 0 to 1 for the raw color values. So we have to give it a range. So let's give it from 0.0, comma, and 1.0, which is the maximum color for the raw ranges. And let's see how this works. So the thing with this, let me run it and I'll show you what I mean. Let's make another function, or we can just stick with this function. Let's just stick with this function. The color rect, that color, we can change these values here inside color to rand value, and each time rand value. Okay, but it's not. That's okay. Rand value and rand value. Let's see what happens. More than likely, we're just going to get the same color over and over. And I'll explain why in a second. Let's save this. Okay, so let's click change color. So if you notice, I'm clicking change color. At the bottom here, you can see my mouse is being clicked right here. Click, 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 and no change. Let me explain why. When we declare the variable random value, it calculated a random f range between 0 and 1, but that value is set. The only way we can get a different value is if we call the script all over again, because the variable was already made at the beginning here. It was declared once and is made once when the script runs. What we can do is place that inside of our function, so that every time we need to call a random value, we can call a function instead, so the calculation is run all over again. In this case, it's only run once, and whatever the value is here, it's going to be the same value wherever we put it in the code. So this is a initial value that we get that stays the same throughout the lifetime of the script. So let's do that. Let's just create a function. And we'll call it function. We can call it random value as well. Control C, Control V, and let's take the calculations here. Control C, and we can remove this. We can remove the variable. Make this function here. Now it's a little different here. We're not going to return void as we've been doing before. Like here, we are returning void here and return void here. We're not returning void in this case. We actually want to return a float value. So let's put an arrow, and after the arrow, we type in float. And now you can put your semicolon, sorry, your colon. And let's put that. Let's say value, sorry, var value is equal to, you don't have to do this, you can just return it directly, but we say var value is equal to what we saved there, randf range. Now it's complaining that something is wrong because we haven't returned anything as yet. Remember, we are supposed to return a float value here. And all the rest, we won't return anything because it's void, but we need to return something here. So let's enter for the next line and type return, and we're going to return this value. You can name this anything you want. It doesn't have to be value. We return value. We're returning whatever we calculated inside here. So you can put a whole set of calculations on the inside of this and then return it afterwards. Make sure it returns the same thing as we declared it returns here, a float. So now we can just use the rand value up here, but of course when you're calling a function you have to use the open and close brackets. And there we go, all errors done. So every time we click the button now, we're going to get a different color. Click, click, click. This works perfectly. Alright, let me just point out something here. If you want lighter colors, let's say you have dark backgrounds in your game and you want lighter colors, you'll have to use a higher range for the minimum value here. Our recommended range is 0.4, so you never go dark as in really close to black and those and those values. So let's save this and see it works. Change color. You want to raise it more. If you want to raise that value, you can do so. 0.8 maybe. Control C. You realize the closer we go to the closer the minimum value is to the maximum value, the brighter the colors are. So in my game I use 0.4 because it gives nice toned down colors but much lighter than the background. There is another way we can approach this, approach colors. I'm just going to leave this here for now, but you can actually make an array of colors. So if you just want specific colors, like if you have a theme and you don't want to go out of that theme, you can make an array of specific colors. I'm going to approach that shortly. Okay, let's just put a hashtag in front of this. We'll comment it out. We don't have to get rid of this function because we're not going to use it, but let's we can create a new function afterwards. Let's call it random color, and we will pre-populate it afterwards. And that may return a type color. And let's pass for now. Okay, great. Let's just define some colors here to make life easy, or else we're going to have to put the RGB code every time. If we just give the colors names, it'll be much easier. So let's do 3 simple ones. Let's do variable RGB. So let's say red. Make that of type color. And this will be capital color again, and you can just pick the color if you want. Right click. I'm just going to type it in because it's easy. RGB 1.0. Remember it's floats, so it's 1.0 comma 0.0 comma 0.0. so that will be red. Let's do green. My god, spelling. It's a type color again. So you're being specific about a type. I mean, it's good to be specific about your type, so when you're making your programs or your codes, you don't want to make any mistakes in what type you enter into certain functions or parts of the code that you need something specific. So you just if you have the wrong type, it's going to tell you for sure. You're going to get red errors all over. Okay, so this color green, RGB. So the green, the G part, it's full 1, and the other 2 are down to 0. And variable blue, RGB, type color is equal to same thing, color. Remember, as I said, you can use the color picker. Like right click on the color and go to pick color, and turn the R down to 0, the green down to 0, and the blue all the way up to 1, and you can get a code there if you prefer that way. But you get the same values: 1 0 0 0 1 0 0 0 1 RGB, red, green, blue. And let's just make to make counting easier, because we're going to use random again. Let's just let's create a color array. And make this of a type. We'll let it know it's an array we're trying to make, and square brackets, and we're going to tell it's a type of color array, equals, and this is where it comes in easily. Open brackets again, square brackets, red, blue, green. It doesn't matter what you name them. I had it wrong side. Well, I typed it into the array differently, but that's okay. It's just going to register in a different order from what I declared them here. That doesn't affect the function. Let's say, for example, you want to name a red lipstick, maybe something red. I'm just thinking about something red. This will throw an error because there's no red that's defined up here. So wherever you have the red here, you'll have to put lipstick. You can choose the names for whatever colors you want. You can choose codes, you can choose names like the acceptable names like maroon, those type of things. It doesn't really matter. Once you have the same names within the array, we can use this array easily. Let's create a new function. If new function at the bottom here, rand color. Let's just give it a name, value. It doesn't matter. It can be color value. It doesn't really matter. Just make sure you return what we need. This time we want to return a full color. So what we're going to do is we're going to call up the array. Let me just minimize the output here. The array, the color array. So we're going to choose one of these colors. So let's say color array. And usually we put a number. We can put 0, 1, 2, 3. It doesn't matter. But we want it random. We need to know how much elements are found in the color array. In our case, it's just 3 elements, but in your case, it may be different. But we can just use a function to get that value as well. What we want to get is a random. This is where we use the integer because the element is from 0 to whatever n value you have in your array. In our case, 3. So it'll be 0 to 2 because it goes, it starts at 0 and it's 1. The first element is 0, second element is 1, third element is 2, and so it goes. So even though we have 3 elements here, it goes from 0 to 2, which is 0, 1, 2, which is still 3 elements. That's how arrays work in GDScript and a lot of other programming languages. So we're going to put here rand I. Remember I was talking about we have different randoms. And here, when you're using random I, we use something, the percentage sign, which is called modulus, and color array dot size. We need to get the size of the array. Let's look up how rand I works. So you can control and click and bring up rand I. You also have something called rand I range, in which we could just put the ranges that we wanted, like from 0 to 2. Or if you just use rand I alone, let's read the documentation here. It returns a random unsigned 32-bit integer. We use the remainder sign to obtain a random value in the interval, this interval, 0 and n, meaning amount of elements we have, -1, which is perfect because then we don't have to do any calculations again. Because remember I said in our case, let's go back to here, in our case we have 3 elements and this will be 0, 1, 2. But if we used this random range here, we will have to see from 0 to 2, even though there are 3 elements, because we have to -1 from it manually. If we use randi, we can just see randi, it automatically starts from 0 and just put the number, and it will automatically -1 from that first. Because if you look at this, it says randi %20 returns integer between 0 and 19. If it's 100, 0 and 99. If it's 100 plus 1, 1 and 100. So it just minuses 1 from the final value that you put in here after the percentage sign. So that's perfect for us. So let's just do that. Let's just put the color array dot size, which will give us 3 in this case, but then we don't have to -1 because randi with the open and close brackets, that is empty, and the percentage sign returns from 0 to n-1, which is exactly what we need. And over here, let's just pull in the color act again. Dot color is equal to, we don't have to declare color again because this function that we have here is going to return a color already. Oh, I forgot to return the color. Let's go down there, return, and we're going to return the color, which is value, we named it. So back to the on button pressed function, and we just have to say rand color, and that's it. Because rand color returns a color, we already specified that when we made the rand statement, the rand color function. Now let's just save this and let's play. So if I click change color, remember it's random, so you may not get certain colors until you press for a while, but you saw there we got red, blue, and green, and that's all the colors. I'm just clicking away. We're not getting anything else but red, blue, and green. So this is how you would define specific colors that you want to use in your program. Next, I just want to play around with modulus a little so you can see how modulus works. Okay, let's approach modulate instead to change the color of the color actor. We have the color X selected here, and let's go across into the inspector. Remember it's in the node right now, so we'll switch to inspector, and we'll see the modulate at the bottom here. If we want to access modulate in the code, let's hover over modulate. It says to use the property modulate common M, and it's a color property as well. So let's do that. Let's comment out what we did here earlier, and let's put the color act dot modulate. Remember to leave the original rect as white, because we will get mixing of colors if we don't do that. Leave it white, and whatever colors we have next will mix with the white and give you the color that you really want. Color act modulate equals to, let's just test it for now. Let's give it the lipstick color. So this is supposed to give you the red color. Control save, Control S to save, and let's run this project. If we click change color, we expect to see red, and that's exactly what we got. Now that we have that working, let's change the modulate to a random color. Remember, modulate uses a color, so we're not going to put ranges on it. We already have a function here that calculates random colors. If we use the random value, we will have to actually write in the code like this: color rand value, like we did before. So let's just do this for now. We can also modify this rand value function to return an actual value like this, like the rand color value, a single color value. Let me save and run the modulate. It's supposed to work the same way. Change color, RGB. Click it many times to make sure it's working. Of course, if you want to do the other range that I had before, you use the random value, random range that we have here, and we can just copy this code here, Control C, and here replace random color with that. Let's save. Let's play. Now we're going to have a wider range of random colors, lighter random colors, because our range is from 0.4 to 1 for the RGB codes. And that's it. That's how you get random colors. And there are different ways you can use this. You could have blocks change colors, you can have circle change colors, depending on whatever you use. You can have the background changing colors, you can affect the color of text randomly. All these things you can use the color for. Once there's a color or a modulate property for any one of those nodes, you can affect the color with the random color. I hope you enjoyed this, and see you in the next one.